New mic. Who is this? So this is the first video on my new microphone. I'm still figuring out how to make this sound good and not too annoying. If this sounds like ass, I'm incredibly sorry, but I'm trying my best. So let me know if this is okay, I guess. Anyway, the past couple of months I have slowly but surely been playing through snowboard games for about 15 hours. And for a channel that I was supposed to put little to no effort in, that's quite a bit. But I did so because I miss SSX. SSX is a special type of game to me, because just like anybody watching this video that grew up in the early 2000s, it defined part of my childhood when it comes to video games. I used to play this game all the time with my friends after playing in the forest or after school in this store called the Movie Max, where they had all these old school games and you could rent movies and you could buy mostly candy. And in here they had a PlayStation 2 and a GameCube and all that. They had a couple of consoles. I'm not quite sure which consoles they truly had. It's been a while. But we'd always end up playing mostly Mario Kart Double Dash and SSX 3. I have very fond memories of this time in my life. And SSX 3 as a snowboard game was something magical to me. An extreme sports game experience that never once got dull, but still managed to be declared dead about 12 years ago after a series of negative reception and, in my opinion, missteps. But I miss this series, and thus today I want to yap about it extensively. So what I'll do in this video is briefly talk about what SSX is, summarize how I view its entries as a complete package, talk about each of them individually, and then wrap up while crying about a golden age or some shit like that. And I'm probably gonna be way too lengthy about everything, but if you see the video length, you know. So, SSX was an extreme sports game made by EA, and it put EA on the map as a viable competitor in the extreme sports space. And for good reason. SSX pioneered the arcade racing sports with performing these tight and technical tricks. It was a game that stood out against its peers. It's not even just snowboarding, but extreme sports in general, and it did so by daring to be different. It wasn't just snowboarding down a track or a level, it was unique level design with these crazy surrealistic maps like waterfalls and pinball machines, jumping through helicopters and all that, and getting so much air that you would break your fucking legs in real life. And these aesthetic ideas like jumping over ski apartments, grinding on ski lifts and all that, it made things so much more interesting, crazy and fun. Then instead of going down hills, you had these different elements where you had to perform a bunch of tricks, and in later on even more diverse type of game modes, like these challenges where you had to stay off the snow, where you had to knock out a bunch of kids, where you had to, I don't know, a couple of things to make the going down a track gameplay more interesting. It added to the SSX brand, and they didn't add all of this at once. They gradually built it up, And that's what made it really cool. They managed to be inventive with the brand. And something SSX also did that was incredibly important for its brand was its characters and their movements inside of these tracks. The characters were designed to be remembered through these unique personalities and personality traits. Like, if you'd ask anybody that played these games at the time, they know by name what the character stands for. And in half of these games they are even voice acted, which is really fucking cool. They kinda let go of that near the end of the series, but you know, I think it was really cool to have those iconic characters with their snowboard related pros and cons based on their character, and they'd perform differently in these tracks, which made it even more diverse when it comes to the gameplay. And these characters could also even further be customized, their pros, cons, snowboards. You could buy new boards and clothes, or you could get these skill points to upgrade their speed, or their trick speed, or their stamina, or whatever. And then in-game it really showed, because these characters were able to do these reality-defying twists and turns that the game incentivized, because it would grant you speed boosts to use and outspeed your opponent, which was just a combination of elements by customizing and doing all that shit to add another element to racing. And what made it even better was they wanted to incentivize doing these tricks by customizing these characters to do these tricks and getting these speed boosts out of it. But they made it even cooler by making these, again, reality-defying monster tricks or Uber tricks. I think Uber tricks is what most people know, but I'm an SSX On Tour enthusiast, so I usually call them monster tricks. And that made shit even more spectacular by letting go of the boards and all that shit that never that never would be possible in real life. And it was something that was never seen before in an extreme sports game like this. And that's what made it so fucking cool. And all of these elements together was just a brand oozing of personality, and that everyone that's ever even heard of has fond memories of. But after its final installment in 2012, it disappeared. Admittedly, for good reason. But I do miss these games, man. Now, the way I view the entire series is as follows. To me, SSX, the original, not the 2012 game, is its foundation, a quote-unquote blend prototype. It put the brand and EA Sports big on the map as a serious extreme sports game developer. And the reason I call it blend is because I have the knowledge and experience of the games that would follow it. Like, I experienced the entries later on in the series, and I know it would get much, much better. But as a start, and if I didn't know those other games existed, this was a fantastic game to build the SSX brand. And then, about a year later, SSX Tricky is what truly shot EA Sports big up to the place of top dog, sitting on the throne, through streamlining the original experience, but most importantly adding tons of personality to its characters, the addition of the fucking amazing Uber tricks, and the most catchy fucking theme song on It's Tricky, It's Tricky, oh, it's tricky. I should never do that again. It was a fantastic follow-up that many still see as the greatest extreme sports game of all time. But in my humble opinion, SSX 3 proved otherwise. This is where the series peaked through its incredible design all throughout the game. Gathering some footage for this in 2024 and thus playing it, it feels so fucking good, man. It's such a complete game. I can't even criticize for anything if I tried, and I'm not gonna lie, it's by far the game I played the most for this video, and I got too much footage for it, but I was just having a great time, man. And this was the final game on the PlayStation 2. SSX On Tour was where they completely went off the rails. And I don't mean this in a negative way. I love this game. In my opinion, doing something different with On Tour worked out. They both went completely off the SSX brand, but also stayed within that lane and expanded it by adding so much fucking detail to the experience. It's a completely different vibe than the games prior to it, that I love to death. I would not be able to choose between SSX Free and On Tour. Both games are peak SSX to me. And then it sadly all went downhill. SSX Blurry was the start of the death of SSX. It was where the series went downhill after an upward trajectory. It was a game designed for nothing but profiting off the Wii's popularity, and thus derived way too much from the SSX brand in every single aspect of the experience. And as such was just a fucking buzzkill. And I think they knew something had to happen for SSX to be successful again. They knew Blurry kind of flopped. But they wanted to give it one last go. One last go with SSX 2012. They didn't even give it a different name, they just called it SSX. Like clean slate, revival, same name, just SSX. The attempt was horrible. After staying silent for 5 fucking years. They knew Blurry wasn't the game people wanted, and they tried to bring SSX back one more time. But they did so in a way you wouldn't be able to guess it was part of the SSX series, if you didn't tell them. They went with this far too realistic and bland, going down the mountain approach that really struck a nerve. So I don't want to be this guy, but funnily enough it's kinda like a mountain on its own. The worst games are the outer layers, aka the first and the last games. Then a little bit higher up the mountain are Tricky and Blurry, though I gotta say Tricky is way closer to the peak than Blurry, so it's kind of a skewed mountain. And then at its peak we find the two games in the middle of the pack, in SSX Free and SSX On Tour. And I think a shape like that is in a way pretty poetic, really. So that is my quick summary of how I feel about all of these games. So you can leave the video now if you want. I don't know, kinda gave my opinion already. Haha. But to remember SSX for the great series it was, I wanna briefly discuss every single game separately and talk about my feelings and opinions on all of it. I'm gonna try to keep this short, something I'm incredibly bad at. So, in the year 2000, we got SSX. Just the first title, the quote-unquote blend one. To me, this was the foundation of a legendary series, with its fast-paced racing and high-flying tricks and all that, and these never-before-seen reality-defying courses with like a pinball machine and a tropical island. And for its time, and with its competitors, this level design was, I'd almost say, revolutionary. In my opinion, looking back at it now in 2024, the level design was really cool. It was like the Tokyo Megaplex. I think that's such a fascinating course, like a fucking pinball machine with all these crazy bumpers, flippers, switches and ramps. And in the courses they already did what the series would expand on eventually, with experimenting with these alternative routes and shortcuts and things to break and blah blah blah. I think the level design was really cool for its time and for a first entry, but it's not as cool and in-depth and detailed as the shit you'd see later on in the series. And I'd say so for the visuals as well. I think shit definitely looks good for PS2, but reading these reviews from the year 2000 and them saying, "Whoa, it looks so realistic and almost like you're actually going down the course in real life," like, no man. Like, no, it definitely doesn't look like that. But for PlayStation 2, this was pretty fucking good, man, with these animated polygonal 3D characters with the fluid animations and their smooth movement. And like I said, the courses are pretty fucking cool, and for its time the graphical special effects with, I don't know, fireworks and particles and all that, it's pretty good, man. It's definitely for a first game. They nailed it. I do think it's funny as fuck how much this game's visuals were praised at the time, with the knowledge of how much cooler shit would get. But yeah, like I said, I do have to give them credit. Like, I do fuck with the detail they added in terms of graphical effects and stage design, and it really added to that feeling of not making a single part of the course feel lame, and adding a lot of replayability with both friends and on your own. I think that's what really made the game stick in players' minds. And of course, the characters you conquer these courses with, they did something that wasn't really seen before in these type of games either. They managed to create these diverse and predetermined skill sets to upgrade, and these characters all had their own personalities when selecting them, and their names even corresponding with who they are, which is such a cool touch, man. Like, their name is something where I would be like, how can I customize this? And they made it in such a way that, like, oh yeah, the art that tells a lot about the person. Ooh, I think that's dope. I think that's dope as fuck. But the characters in game then, it blends the different skill sets and their tricks they can pull off and all that really well. And to truly be the fastest on a course, you need to find a balance between them all. And I think how different the characters actually feel is really cool for these different playstyles. Not everybody plays the game the same way. Someone heavier characters, someone lighter characters, blah blah blah, and I think that's really fucking cool. And what this game did to add to that basically is introducing the boost meter. And this boost meter is what is like the glue of it all, because the boost meter fills up by doing tricks, and the more boost you got, the higher the level, the faster the boost will go. And thus you needed to find a balance between tricks and speed, because the higher boost meter would give better speed boosts. And these different characters feeling so different meant you had to choose the right character for you so you could get the biggest boost, blah blah blah. Fucking cool. And you needed those boosts too, because especially in the final heat, the AI would be fucking insane. They would, you know how some games have the extreme level? That was the AI in SSX in the final heat. That's crazy. The only thing I can say about this boost shit and tricks is that it was the one game that didn't have Uber tricks yet, and I think that's unfortunate because it would have shot the game up even more. But that's nitpicking, man, and they would add it instantly after anyway, so I'm not even gonna speak about that. But as good as this first entry is, I gotta say, the controls were stiff as hell. Playing this now does not feel great. Like the turning is hella slow, both just going down the course or in the air doing tricks. And what is the worst part about all of this isn't even the controls feeling stiff, but it's like randomly getting stuck and falling over nothing. It feels like ass. And it sets you back quite a bit when doing so for no fucking reason. Like I can't help falling down because I'm tripping over nothing, and then I'm set back like a couple places even, sometimes even land in like 6th, 7th, 8th place. It sucks. And I am allowed to complain about this because it would be fixed later on. I didn't have these issues in most of the later games. And another small complaint I have about this game, I guess, is they really hadn't figured out how to get the most out of the PlayStation 2. Because this game and Tricky as well had mad frame rate issues, and that still really shows. Very regularly it would drop between 60 and 30, and a stable FPS really isn't a thing here. And I think that kinda sucks. That really brings down the experience a bit, because it sometimes feels really unfinished, I guess. But other than that, I think this game is great. I think this game is a really good start. It's just that in the SSX ranking, when you have so many fucking amazing games, this is one of the games in the lower echelons. But I do have to say, and that is what this game nailed instantly, and it would never be bad, is the fucking sound design. I think that is something that isn't credited enough when remembering these games. The sound design in every SSX game, starting with this one, is fucking fantastic.
Hello sports fans and welcome to Mesa Blanca Sierra.
Frontside 360. Backside 360. Frontside 360.
Like the choice of music and then the music changing pace based on performance is ingenious. But even if it didn't change pace based on performance, the tracks are just really well chosen. It really fits the vibe of snowboarding down whatever. Could be anything, man. A mountain, regular course, fucking slide, I don't know. Just fits the fucking vibe, and I love that. Same for the character voices. I think it's decent enough to include this in this game. It's not like revolutionary, but it's good enough, and they would expand on this later on as well, even though it wouldn't be the dominant factor in these games and eventually disappear again. I think it's a decent addition to make the players bond with the characters, I guess. And what is the most underrated thing about this sound design are the sound effects. I think the small little details like a small beep and whoop and fireworks and I don't know, all that, those small little sound effects everywhere when falling down, and even the characters saying some random shit like when they fall down. I think that is probably the most underrated thingy, because those sound effects add so much. I add them in my videos nowadays as well, and I think the videos are much better in quality because of it, even though it's such a small thing nobody will notice. And I think it adds a whole lot to this game, rather than nothing happening and just having or you're basically hearing nothing and you're just having the visual effect. If that had no audio, it would downgrade the experience by a bit, in my opinion. So yeah, that is SSX. A very good start. And it was the skeleton of all of these games. But that's all it is to me. And that's why I don't rate it very highly in the SSX series. But then, about a year later, they released SSX Tricky. And this is a game I have a very controversial opinion about. So, Tricky is an upgraded version of the original that keeps mostly the same levels from the original SSX games. Other than that, they did things like subtle changes to graphics, like less fuzzy visuals, and they are sharp now, better textures, better character animations and visual effects. They added a new they added a couple new characters, and one not so very important but still very important thing is the AI is toned down for the final heat, so you don't feel like you're having to fight for your life basically. But what Tricky really did was make SSX an arcadey trick focused gameplay with a lot of focus on personality, mostly character personality, and I think that's pretty cool. They tried to introduce attitude to the SSX series with lots of characters to choose from, with these well-known voice actors to give the characters personality, and they'd even shit-talk each other.
Hey, do you have to be so pushy? That is a load of bollocks. Hey Mum, that's for you! Moby loves ya!
Congratulations, you picked up a gold.
Both before courses and in these interesting cutscenes. The intro cutscenes before the tracks are also more advanced, which is pretty cool. And then these characters would also talk in the character select screen and entice you to pick them, basically. I think that's really cool.
Ha cha cha cha! Cha-ching!
It made you remember these characters and feel a type of way about all of them, which is pretty important in a game like this, I think, especially for the SSX brand as well. And I think it absolutely nailed that. I have strong feelings towards all of these characters. I fucking hate Moby for no other reason than I don't know why he speaks the way he does.
No problems with me, mate. I'll take care of you. All right, boss. Good choice. Like your style.
Nah, I chose him for today's footage, I guess. And he annoyed me in more ways than one. I don't know, don't fuck with him as a person. Fuck you, Moby. Still picked him. Like, his looks are so cool, and then he starts talking, I'm like, bro, don't talk, just don't.
JP, you think you're the business, but you really are a charity case, pal.
Suck eggs, Moby.
Anyway, these characters all had okay customization, I guess, with outfits and stuff. It's a little better than the original, but nothing worth mentioning. After completing levels and challenges and all that, you get these new fits and boards and points to spend on their various stats to upgrade and make your life easier in future tracks and all that. It's pretty cool. But what is very important in this character customization, this personality type of thing, essentially, Tricky added enemy status, and all these enemies have a status and you can influence them by i.e. hitting them in the course and thus making them your enemies. So these hostile enemies you annoyed all your life will try to take you down and basically make you fall over and you're behind. Friends will warn you and shield you from those angry enemies. And then of course you have the neutrals that, I don't know, they're just there, they do nothing. It's a pretty interesting addition that they could have expanded on in future entries. I think it's a pretty cool idea, honestly, even though it's not that fleshed out in this one. It's basically you're just minding your own business and then some guy comes over and he's like, ugh, fuck you, and he takes you down. It's like, whatever, okay, that's not cool. But I think that's probably a very important one when it comes to the racing, even though I didn't think it has as much effect yet as it could have had. But yeah, other than that, even though they copied a lot of tracks from the original, I think the level design is much better and more interesting. What you do in this game, in the story mode basically, is you, for example, gotta win 3 races to win a gold medal and advance or do this trick competition and all that. It's still the same snowboard game as the original, but with better level design. I think even though they copied tracks from SSX mostly and added 2 new tracks, the level designs are definitely the best so far. Not just because they have 2 new courses, but even the courses that have returns have had these substantial tweaks. So they offer more jumps, more alternative routes, so there's more replay value. There are these different obstacles and shit. And in some cases they even changed the layout altogether, so it definitely doesn't feel like the same game as the original. But I think the level design isn't really one of the most important things about Tricky. I think, to me, it's also not even the personality focus. It's probably the introduction of Uber tricks. Like the special cool ass tricks to spell the word tricky to get an infinite boost. And they facilitated this by making gravity more defined and make room for these cooler Uber tricks and all that. And I think that's really what this series is remembered for, these insane Uber tricks. And this is the game where they introduced it. And not to mention how fucking iconic this game's its tricky tune is. It plays every single time when you're performing an Uber trick. It's an earworm, really. And honestly, I think the soundtrack is better in general, really. And once again, it's mostly the It's Tricky tune that really sticks, but the other hip-hop and techno tunes are also very important. And how this ties into the tricks is the songs do actually get better after you complete a trick successfully, making for a more dynamic listening situation. But even when you don't, I think the music is really fucking good.
After an incredible first year hosting the Meltdown, the mayor of Mercury City has challenged the designers to take it to the next level, making it the biggest and baddest course of the SSX circuit. Early indications from the riders is that they may have been too successful.
But then again, Tricky very much suffers from the same issues as the original. The controls are way too stiff still, which hinders the cool trick shit no matter how cool the introduction of Uber tricks really is. You still fall on every single edge and are really easily knocked off the course, which will set you back like fucking 5 million years. And the FPS is still not fixed. They still really had trouble figuring out how to use the PS2 in the best way, most efficiently. But overall, Tricky is an upgrade over the original SSX. It added personality, it added cooler level design, more interesting level design even with the courses they copied. The Tricky tune is insane, the Uber tricks are insane, and yeah, overall just an upgrade. But I do not see this as one of the best extreme sports games. Like, while gathering info on this video, I've seen a lot of really bad takes, including that this game is the one people remember, that this is the one that's iconic, while the others are just good games. And I just think that's some horseshit. I've seen these complaints about SSX toning down the arcadey physics and making it accessible to a wider audience, and making it not the out-and-out wild experience that Tricky was. Like, come on, man. Then the shit about different characters and no more trash talk in Free. Like, who fucking cares, man? I think that would have become so fucking stale. I think it's cool that Tricky does it, but doing it in every game is so fucking stale. And then the complaints about On Tour after that are even dumber, like they supposedly went really off the rails with that one. Oh, it's so bad, oh, the soundtrack is really off the rails, Wafu 180, and every turn they made was a decision to dilute the personality of Tricky that it had worked so hard for to build up. Like, shut the fuck up, dude. and then I've seen people blaming the changes on certain stuff when... Why blame? They're good changes. People that think Tricky is the best game in the entire SSX franchise are fueled by nostalgia. And I'm not saying I'm being objective here. I have favorites. But playing this now, and I've played every single game for this video multiple hours, Tricky is not even close to being the best of the bunch. And downplaying the rest that supposedly aren't icons, even though people fucking love SSX Free, and more people than you know fucking love On Tour, but especially Free is way more iconic than Tricky, and I will forever defend that opinion. And yeah, it's sure Tricky brings that arcadey and flashy gameplay, it brought the personality, but it's not even close to being the best or most iconic game. And that's my stance on it.
Fuck you guys.
This is the one that is. SSX Free, let me start off by saying this is the first game where they fixed the fucking frame rate. Yeah, I don't know. They finally figured out the PlayStation 2. Hooray! SSX Free is insane. Insane fucking game. And as a youngster, I always was of the opinion that On Tour was the better game. But recording this video, getting all the footage today, this is the game I played the most, and it wasn't even close. What does that tell me? I don't know. Maybe growing up playing mostly On Tour was skewed my opinion a bit. I don't know. So SSX Free is a game where the entire game is connected through one mountain. It basically has 3 peaks and you can unlock all of them one by one in the game's story mode. So basically what EA has done here to make things more accessible is they gave the player a magical like PDA to transport them from any spot on the mountain they desired. And this one mountain concept is pretty fucking cool because they connect stuff. It isn't a game with like loosely attached courses or series of hills, but EA wanted unity. And SSX Free thus takes an entire geographic region, even though it's a fictional one, and it delivers a real and connected mountain. So, for example, and this is one of my favorite things, what this does is it makes a race possible that takes about 30 minutes, where you can race from the top of Peak 3 to the bottom of the mountain. And that is such a cool thing to me. it's such an interesting approach to an SSX game. And what is really even cooler about that is how each peak, even though they're connected, they feel vastly different. Like peak 1 is this easy and accessible type of peak. Then you have peak 2 with like the wilderness and the waterfalls and the forests and tunnels and I don't know, all that. It a bit more of a challenge, but mostly the aesthetic difference is really fucking cool. And then you have peak 3, which is the hardcore cracked open monster that tests your skill and everything you've learned throughout the journey. My favorite level of all of them is funnily enough in peak 1, which is Metro City, like this urban mountain blend and all these different paths and grinds and rails and stunts and all that. It's such a fucking cool course, man. Metro City might be my favorite course in all of SSX. What SSX 3 has really done well is upgrade over Tricky even in terms of the courses. I like the courses in Tricky, but now they are less Looney Tunes design. They are more realistic and organic, not as crazy, and I really fuck with that. It really tones it down to not be that arcadey shit, but more like an actual cool snowboard game. Like, I felt cool in this game. And the courses they did make are larger, wider and far more in-depth than Tricky, with all these different paths and things to jump on and grind on and all these different things appearing at every fucking pixel on your screen. I think that's really, really well done. Like, graphically this game is so much cooler than what Tricky was able to deliver. I think making these natural levels with thick snow and these blended in grinds and all that, it's near perfect. I honestly don't know what more they could have done in terms of visuals and level design in this one. I fucking love this game, man. Have I said I love this game yet? I love this game. And its audio design is also once again fucking stellar. Like, it's very high production music and sound effects. Like, the fucking menu track is groovy as hell and the music selection is really, really sharp. With all these licensed artists also working on this game, because, well, SSX was a household name at this point. It's just a game of sonic excellence.
You're listening to EA Radio Big. What makes a good day perfect? Good question. How about the legendary James edition?
Hey, Simon! Hurry up, let's go!
And the same goes for the SSX3 characters. The characters are these soft looking, and I don't mean like lame or anything, but they are like smoother and more polished. And sure, they do feel like a little bit generic opposed to the SSX Tricky characters, but I can name the entire roster, and I know what they look like. I can name how they feel. It's not like they aren't memorable, but not as fleshed out, I guess, as in Tricky. But what does lift these characters into a different stratosphere are their animations. I love the animations in Tricky and SSX, but this game is so fluid, man. It's constantly and it's fluid motion. Their moveset, to begin with, their moveset is huge, and the connections between any fucking move, no matter how many tricks, how many uber tricks you do, it's so seamless. The characters feel like superheroes, and they feel like this flexible, elastic entity that's just made to be cool and make you go, oh, this is so cool. I feel like the coolest guy ever. Doing tricks with these characters and watching all of them pull them off is so fucking fascinating. The animations are the best in any of the free games so far, and even down to the smallest details. Like you have this sunlight coming in, the fog and the snowflakes mid-air, and you even have those with those snowflakes. Some of them hit the screen for that. Ooh, look at me, a cool effect. I love seeing like the sunlight through the trees in the forest and reflecting off the snow, making it feel like a more complete experience and more rich experience. And I also really fuck with actually being able to play at various times of the day, including night, where the entire level looks different. And even as something as simple as snow colors, they are all different from one another. They have all these different type of snow colors to provide a bit of a range of whiteness, if that's a thing, and the entire palette full of blues and purples and shit to make it feel like a warm experience, I guess. And not even just the colors, but they also used different types of snow, which is pretty fucking crazy for a PS2 game. They use these different types of snow styles to create more realistic powder and better and more ice looking ice, I guess. But in the end, it isn't about level design or visuals or audio design or whatever. It's about playing the game. Playing the game feels fantastic. What you basically do in this game is you have 4 game modes, and they're all tied together in one way or another. You have single event, Conquer the Mountain, you have multiplayer, and for PS2 owners this was the first time they added online, which nobody fucking cared about, and it was ass. But that's not the point. So single event is just like an arcade mode, I guess, in which you can just play the races you've unlocked through the Conquer the Mountain mode, which is okay, yeah. Conquer the Mountain is the game mode in which you unlock all the courses and all that by winning races and completing challenges and all that to slowly unlock everything of Peak 1, Peak 2, Peak 3 and beat the game. Multiplayer is just split screen, which has always been in the game. I don't know why I haven't mentioned that yet. Every game up until this point had split screen. It's not that important for this video, but yeah, you can play with 2 people. Way. And online was a first, like I said. You could go online using a USB headset. Like who fucking did this, man? You could go online on any open course in the game. So you had to conquer the mountain first and beat all that shit before going online. I don't know, it's pretty ass, man. I think what is really cool about this is how they allowed you to do like the little snowboarding sections, the free roam to the races. Like you'd actually feel like you're on a peak. It wasn't just selecting different races on a peak, but you could actually snowboard towards the courses, which is so fucking cool, man. Like all of the surfaces between the courses are rideable, and to make it feel more connected, like they're designed with trees and park benches to rail, little jumps to surge out, and there's even these green lights that will ask you if you want to partake in a certain challenge within this free roam, which is awesome. I absolutely love that design. And then like the snowboarding itself, like of course it's really, really good. Everything they've done so far is good. It was very much expected for the gameplay to be really good as well. Controlling these characters feels so good, man. Like steering doesn't feel stiff, it feels incredibly smooth. Pulling off these tricks is really, really cool. Like SSX was designed to be a freestyle game. to be a combo making extravaganza. And it's such a full, such a complete, such a good feeling experience. It's so much bigger than it initially seems. It's almost criminal. Like, if you thought the tricks you could pull off were reality defying before, like, this is even crazier. Like, these trick boosts will allow you to jump up even higher, and pulling off these uber tricks is so incredibly fast and cool looking. They even added the board press, both forward and backward, which I've seen this really good guy like showing off for 4 hours. Like, this fucking video, I hope I can find it and like yoink it in here. Like, watching him play SSX is the most satisfying experience ever, man. Watching him play SSX free. I'm not nowhere near as good, but seeing myself go here on the half pipe with Simon was... I felt like on top of the world with pulling all of these tricks off. It feels so fucking good. Especially the uber tricks, and the uber tricks actually upgrade as well, because there's now 3 levels of uber tricks to pull off, to basically build up to super uber, which by doing many of them. And each of these tiers, each of these uber level tiers, gives you more points and more tricks to pull off. So the higher the level, the cooler the game gets. That's not a downside. The catch is that it's on a timer, but if you actually know what you're doing, the timer really doesn't matter, because you can build up to do the coolest tricks pretty quickly, if I'm honest. And to unlock a character's full potential and unlock the coolest tricks, you can buy them. So playing the game, getting money from all of this different shit will actually make the game better for you. But I gotta say, once you reach that upper tier of having everything unlocked, it feels so fucking good. That being said, one of the biggest complaints about SSX Free is how it let go of the personality Tricky brought to the table. Like I said, I don't fucking care, man. Like, Simon is the GOAT. Like, look at him, man. Put a fucking sack over his head. And I think the new characters, even though they're kind of generic, they are pretty dope, man. I love characters, like I said, Simon and Griff and all that, and even with the character customization, it's much better than Tricky, which really makes up for the lack of quote-unquote personality and getting rid of the friendly rivalry and all that. Like, you can unlock an enormous quantity of bullshit, from like headgear, hairstyles, jackets, pants, boots, various boards, even fucking sunglasses and dumb shit like a soaker gun. That makes it a lot of fun. I don't need personality when I can have that shit, but it's a personal preference thing. I know. But yeah, overall, SSX Free might be, and probably is, the best game in the franchise. Its gameplay feels buttery smooth, its level design is amazing, sound design is as cool as ever, character customization is crazy good, and it just feels awesome to play this. Like, the connected mountain also, which is really, it's a smart design choice. Like, this is the game to be remembered. To me, this is probably the best extreme sports game ever. And thus, what you do after creating a masterpiece is switching things up. Okay, maybe that's not what you do, but they did. In SSX On Tour, they took an entirely different path, and to me at least, it worked out so fucking well. Like, I cannot start this off with anything else than the most obvious change. The complete 360 in tone, both visually and in terms of audio. Like, me personally, I love the visual design, with like the start intro screen looking crazy as hell, And then the end winning screen where the character goes like, "Oh, I'm so fucking cool, yeah!" And then the flashy fire effects and fireworks that look cooler than ever. And the spectacular Shaun White half-pipe cool fucking sport vibe. I love all of this. They went with this hand-drawn type of art style in the menus and in the loading screen and all that. They wanted to mimic these hand-drawn notebook doodles, and I think they nailed it. They absolutely nailed it. There's this purposefully crude and monochromatic look to it, but it made things so unique. Like these all weird little details and odd-looking creatures and animations, and it's such a weirdo vibe, but in the coolest ways. Like, this is the shit I would draw, but in garbage quality. Like all these surreal looking donkeys and unicorns and stupid monster little guys. Like, goddamn, this game is so fucking stylish all throughout. And the same goes for the music. Like, I think the composer said something along the lines of reviving the rock era.
So we've really looked at how we want to go about transforming this franchise and this title is something that's a lot more culturally relevant. The kids today and our fans, they're changing where they've been in the past, and so the techno music and stuff that was great before isn't as fresh as it was. So we've really tried to look at ways to reinvent this thing, to make it fresh and updated for the youth market, right? So we've gone for this, this kind of rock and roll, crazy sketchbook style that's really a lot more culturally relevant.
And thus we get a lot of rock and some heavy metal, which are two genres I never fucking listened to, but I remember all of these tracks and I love them. You'd think it wouldn't fit the Snowboard vibe, which was usually like hip hop and mostly chill vibes, sometimes a little bit up tempo, but never fucking heavy metal or rock. But it fits the gameplay, man. These tracks fit the gameplay. And anyone that's ever played this, I'd assume they agree. And in terms of visuals, I think SSX On Tour, it doesn't differ that much from SSX Free. I think the characters are somehow a little less detailed even than in SSX Free, but their animations are still fucking smooth as butter. So SSX On Tour still takes place on a single mountain, but sadly, and I think that's really a bummer, they got rid of the free ride between courses. It's now just relegated to this snow resort trail map. But you do still have the peak to the absolute peak to bottom run through all of its available courses, which is now not 30 minutes but 20 minutes. I don't fucking care, it's still really cool. And overall I think the level design is genuinely probably my favorite out of all of them. I actually slightly favor these over SSX Free. With all these secret pathways, jump spots and rail grinds and fucking massive snowfall and trees, and I don't know. Like, SSX 3 had these wide open, uncharted levels, which made for a really cohesive experience. And On Tour is much more focused in its level design, much more tenacious designs. And I think that's for the better, because it makes for a very interesting experience. Like, you have all of this crazy shit happening of all times, like these massive rails which leads to some of the craziest moments, like jumping through a helicopter or grinding on these ski lifts or jumping over these ski huts. All this crazy shit. You can even make pictures of doing these crazy things. You have these picture moments, which I believe they give you a little bit of money to purchase a bunch of shit for in the I'm not sure actually, but they designed these courses to be crazy and to basically be able to do almost anything. And I definitely think that is for the better, because it makes for the most memorable moments in any of the games, in my opinion. And to add to that, this is also the first and I believe only game that no longer takes place on a closed racing course or mountain where nobody else is snowboarding at that very moment, because you can literally run into other random skiers or snowboarders and like these general winter sports enthusiasts on the mountain, which makes for a very real feeling, even though you're grinding on, like, I don't know, a helicopter blades. It's just level design that's hella memorable, even though they're not connected in a way SSX 3 connected the tracks. I think overall, when you make these tracks 1v1 each other, I think SSX On Tour comes out on top, just because of how much you're able to do in these tracks. Another aspect of the game where On Tour comes out on top is this unique single player experience. Don't get me wrong, I love the way SSX 3 wanted you to unlock every single peak and do all of this shit and blah blah blah, but the single player experience in SSX On Tour is in the title. It's called The Tour. And The Tour is probably the coolest game mode in any SSX game. You basically start off with your customized idiot character, and the entire goal is working yourself up in the ranking by doing a bunch of races, trick competitions, but also new and fantastic, unique, all that, these game modes where you, for example, have to knock out kids, stay off the snow, rail grind for a certain amount of meters, going up in 1v1 fights versus one of the main characters to unlock them in tricks or races, and those will then be available in quick play. It's a fucking massive variety in terms of game modes. And even though I was very content with just racing and doing tricks and all that in the previous games, I think these game modes and all of them awarding a bunch of points to for a ranking, it made it so much more than just going down a course against your friends, even though that experience was a lot of fun. But this variety makes the game feel much larger in a way. And the way they designed it is really cool by making these different type of challenges appear based on your ranking, or based on if you've just done one, then it will disappear and something else will substitute it. And I also like the appearance of these different main characters, like not your custom character but the established ones. A good number of characters from the past games appear here, and you basically compete against them repeatedly, not just in these 1v1s. And I do gotta admit, the focus on these characters has been toned down quite a bit. Their personality is basically down to these FMVs when you're about to 1v1 them, and there's no real other personality shit whatsoever, but I don't necessarily mind, because the characters are still there from the previous games. They're still recognizable. You can still play as them in quick play. And what really makes up for this is because the focus in On Tour is mostly on your own character. He doesn't have a voice, but the character customization and making this guy your own character is so fucking good. Like the arsenal of gloves, glasses, pants, shirts, hoodies, jackets and full suits is... holy shit, it's so huge, man. And you also have these insanely good looking snowboards, especially the final couple of ones, which are like $1 million or some shit. Like the speed and the tricks, the trick speed is it's insane. It's absolutely fucking insane. I made my guy look really fucking dumb, and that's something the other games didn't allow me to. In fact, I could only pick an already existing character and just like dress him up a bit, I guess. And this feels like you basically get to customize a newborn baby. I fucking love that. And it's not just this customized character which impressed me. Like I think in quick play you have a couple of interesting characters to unlock, and the most important one, I believe it's by getting number 1 in the tour mode, you get the Yeti. And the Yeti it's exactly what you think it is. It's a Yeti, and he can pull off every single trick ever. I think he has the best maximized stats and everything and all that. It's so fucking fun to play as this guy. I still remember competing against my friend. We would both be the Yeti on the 20 minute downhill track. It was so fun, man. It's such a goofy thing to add, but it's really cool to have those weird customized unrealistic characters. I fucking love that. And one change SSX On Tour made that's very controversial is the monster tricks. They changed the name. It's not Uber Tricks anymore, it's now Monster Tricks. But they also changed the way it works. No longer do you have to work for like pulling off a super Uber or anything like that. It now just has a charge bar that you can charge up by getting these boost thingies, the green one and the red one. They basically made it more friendly to pull these monster tricks off, and I don't think that's a bad thing. You can also pull these tricks off on rails now. And how they managed to make this more user friendly is simply by not having them activated by holding a shoulder button and pressing like circle or anything like that. But now you just use the right analog stick, and when you pull one of these off, it slows down time, but the character doesn't, and it gives you a lot more wiggle room to actually successfully land it. And a lot of people think that's ruining the difficulty, I guess, but to me it isn't really a negative, because the monster tricks were always mostly for show and getting boost, but you could get boost without monster tricks as well. It was mostly like the cool factor and feeling like the coolest guy ever. I don't think it was necessary to implement this slowdown feature, because SSX 3 made me feel fucking cool without it and pulling them off in like the fastest, the quickest way possible. But this isn't necessarily a negative to me. They also made it a little bit more user friendly by being able to get a lot of air pretty much anywhere. Like SSX 3 was very user friendly with that, but SSX On Tour you can jump on everything and pull off those monster tricks. But like I said, I don't think it's a bad thing. Giving you more opportunities to be spectacular is cool as hell. And one thing I almost forgot to mention, but is pretty important, but also not really important, is being able to ski. You can actually not just snowboard in this game, but you can also equip your character with skis. And sure, like visually, it adds a whole lot, and I think the tricks actually look cooler because, well, those two skis crossing and all that's fucking sick. Like, it opens up a whole new set of aerial maneuvers and all that. In terms of controls, it really plays the same as snowboarding, so it doesn't have any impact on the gameplay, but when they added this, I'm like, yeah, why didn't we add this earlier? Like, we don't just snowboard. In fact, most people ski. But I think it's... I don't know if I would have liked them diversifying it a little bit more. I think this is okay. Maybe it's feeling a little bit different in giving the players a choice to pick skis and snowboard and different benefits and the pros and cons and all that. I think it could have been cool, but I think this is fine. And I do not understand why the games after this don't have it. And of course, the final thing I have to mention about On Tour, of course, they completely ditched online after after SSX Free. Like I said, I don't care enough to talk about it. I'd never played online, so I don't know enough about it. But not including it in On Tour after SSX Free says enough about how that went. But yeah, all in all, I love On Tour. I love the different route. I love what they did with the monster tricks. The character customization is insane. And if you 1v1 level design battle it versus SSX Free, it's like it clears it easily, even though the whole connected mountain is the better idea by far. So yeah, in my opinion, SSX Free would edge out On Tour, but they're both amazing games. And then they decided to fuck it. So yeah, SSX Blur. I don't want to hate on this game because it's a fine snowboard game, but goddamn did it disappoint me, and it still does disappoint me. Playing this for footage was not fun, man. Like, it's a snowboard game, alright? If this was the first game in the franchise, I would not have talked shit on this. I would have been, yeah, it's okay, it's a Wii game, blah blah blah. It feels like a Wii game, you know? But after all of these SSX games, and 2 bangers before this is just a stripped down version of SSX. There are no real cool personality things, no identity, less shortcuts. Uber tricks feel, well, they are not impressive at all. And there isn't a whole lot to do other than unlocking the peaks like in SSX Free. Like, the whole gimmick and the whole idea here was the use of the Wii controls and the Wii remote and the nunchuck, and it was obviously targeted to tap into the very popular Wii market. So it uses mostly the nunchuck for its controls. Like, the nunchuck is used to steer your rider down the hill, and the analog stick can be used for like subtle tweaks, I guess. But the real steering is done by twisting your hand around as if you're leaning into the turns, you know, which they did with a lot of Wii games, especially notable in things like Mario Kart and all that. And then the jumps are performed by flicking the thing upward, which is okay. But playing it back then and playing it now, even though my remapping of the controls for an Xbox controller was ass, the controls feel very, very stiff. Like, landing these tricks feels hella heavy. Like, initially it feels okay, but when you stop doing the trick and trying to land it, it feels like you lose all control over your character. Like, it feels so heavy and cumbersome. And then again, it could be due to my remapping, but I fondly remember this being the case on the Wii version as well. And I think that's very, very unfortunate. And it's not just the general controls and the regular tricks, but what they truly fucked up was the Ubers or monster tricks. Performing these is pretty ass. Like, when you're in the air, you have to press and hold A while you draw the shape of that particular Uber with your Wiimote. And it's a patience game. It's a patience game. And I don't have patience. If you have patience and learn this, it's actually a pretty fun game, but it's so not user-friendly, so not beginner-friendly, and it's so bad even I couldn't even pull it off with my remapping this time around. But I seen people say online, and I experienced myself, they couldn't do it either on an actual Wii, due to how inaccurate the Wii remote and the nunchuck felt. And it sounds okay in theory. Like the initial Uber trick, I remember the Z-shape thing. I remember that one being fine, it's not that hard. But at some point you have to do fucking heart shapes and other weird combinations. Like, you cannot pull those off unless you play this game for hours upon hours upon hours. And that fucking sucks. Most of your success doing these will be either down to intense concentration, practicing, or in many cases, just luck. And that sucks because Uber tricks are the coolest shit. Uber tricks are a staple of what made SSX so iconic. Like, seeing these insane moves, these reality-defying moves, like, look at how cool I look. And then you make it so hard to pull off. I think as a kid I still suck at video games, but as a kid I was even worse. And I could barely beat like mediocre games. So if you want to, like, I don't want to be a hater, but you mostly make games for a younger audience. People my age, like, it's becoming more common of people my age to love games, but I think the biggest audience is still kids, because like half of people my age don't like gaming anymore. They feel like they're too old for it. Like, I think that's stupid shit. They watch Netflix 6 hours a day. Different conversation. But you mostly make it for kids, and then you make the entry barrier so fucking high. It's I really hate that. Really didn't work. And like I said, I wasn't able to pull even one off for this video because of remapping my controls. So yeah, I understand wanting to make use of the motion controls by doing that, but mapping the most important thing about SSX probably to it, like, I think they went wrong with that, or at least could have made it more accessible. But the biggest mistake, what I hate this game the most for is its courses. They recycled tracks mostly from On Tour and some of SSX Free, but then made them fucking trash. Like, all the cool stuff and shortcuts and everything that made it interesting was cut. Like, my god, they just fused these two mountains from SSX Free and On Tour together, which made no sense at all really in the first place, but they also made it like fucking trash. And the controls I just discussed, the motion controls to pull off everything in the gameplay, both steering and the Uber tricks, they, like, what have you done, man? Like, these controls, you didn't even take them into account. Like, the best parts of these tracks are the jumps and the deep turns and, like, I guess the sense of speed, because you get the speed boost and you, like, this intense effect, you know, what is that even called? It's a sound effect, whatever. It's basically, you have this boost effect, this blurry effect, oh, look how fast you're going. And, like, yeah, it's cool, but these should have been, I guess, emphasized over the shortcuts they did keep in, and the grind shit, and the elements that demand precision they kept in, even though they cut a lot of it. Because the things they did implement in terms of all of those things, shortcuts, grinds, and things that demand precision, and, like, they really struggled to gel with the motion controls. Like, it's really fucking hard to play this game, but it might just be me. And it's not just the gameplay where they fucked up, in my opinion. Like, even how the game looks. And it's hard to criticize this because it does look in line with other Wii stuff. It looks cartoony, like it's a Wii game. But to me, it's a downgrade of the cool and authentic SSX vibe from, like, Free and On Tour. Like, the way these characters look, it hurts, man. They look like these caricatures of themselves, like these empty shells with no personality whatsoever. And the courses look like squishy, if that makes sense. It feels like I'm going down a bouncy castle, and the lighting is super over the top and almost like causing a little bit of bloom. It looks really, really, really bad, to me at least. And I think the lighting is probably what makes the tracks look even more plasticky. I really don't like how this looks, like, especially because I know and they one-on-one copied the tracks from On Tour over to this game. Like, it looks much worse and far too squishy and cartoony. Like, the cartoony look really doesn't do the OG maps and the OG characters justice. And the maps might look like ass, but I can at least recognize them. The characters do not look like them in the slightest. They just are these generic ass characters with no true personality. And that you can't even knock out in courses. Nor can you even customize them, I believe. It just fucking sucks, man. And I mean, whoa, they added the ability to throw snowballs in levels. Whoa, that's so cool. Yeah, but how about you fucking fix your game design first? I don't know, I'm such a hater, man. And then like this interface. Like, what? Why? Like, the interface, it sounds like I'm nitpicking. I know, I'm a hater. It sounds like a small point. But in a game that uses the Wiimote's pointer to navigate menus, why are all the buttons so close? Like, why do you have continue and give up next to each other? It's what it does. Once you land on an option, it will center it to that option. Like, so if you hit the edge, it will like shoot it towards the center, and you will very often select the wrong option. Like, I know it's a small thing to nitpick about, but goddamn. And like, but I don't want to be a complete hater. Even though the music is kind of toned down and a little bit unnoticeable, I think the music is still pretty good. Like, I like listening to it. Once again, it's based on your performance, and the better you snowboard, the better, then groovier the soundtrack, which is pretty nice, I guess. But other than the music, I really have no positives about this game. With like stolen level design and very stripped down characters that don't feel great, no personality, annoying controls with the fucking nunchuck and Wiimote. Like, who cares? Like, Blur feels like a step back from 3 and SSX On Tour. Like, it's not as crazy, it's not as cool, it has far less content, and overall just feels like a reskinned and very stripped down, just another snowboard game. It's just an SSX game without any skin and a gimmick that doesn't function at all. and made people, including me, dislike it. And that is unfortunate. Because this game, the game is actually massive and has a lot of competitions and characters that it would take you a long time to get bored of it. And it's really unfortunate, because if it wasn't for the controls, I probably would have been a little more positive about this game actually. So yeah, I didn't want to hate on Blur as much as I did, but it's just my genuine raw feelings. I don't think Blur is a super bad game, but it's definitely not a game I will ever want to play again, and that's really unfortunate. And the reception was still okay, but the general player base, the general fans, the core audience, they weren't the biggest fans, including me. And I think EA knew. And thus, the series died for a year or 5. But then, in 2012, they made a very last-ditch, desperate attempt to revive the series with SSX 2012. Well, it was just called SSX, but you know. And SSX 2012 is a better game than Blur. But the reason I said at the start of the video this is on the bottom of the SSX mountain is because it's a decent snowboard game, but it's not a good SSX game. SSX 2012 is best explained as an SSX game making an SSX game without ever having played an SSX game, and just reading reviews and hearing people talk about it. Like, this game is a realistic game. They yapped about how they could scan real-life mountains and use this to create courses for the game that are these super realistic images. But that isn't what SSX is about, man. Like, SSX should feel slick, it should feel goofy, humorous, and this game just felt like a very serious attempt at a snowboard game, when it really should be fucking around, like dicking around. It's an arcade-style snowboard series. It should be crazy, it should be fun, and they replaced fun with realism and frustration. Like, I don't need to feel like I'm fighting a realistic mountain and trying to survive. I want to feel like an over-the-top cool person doing these crazy fucking tricks with impossible hang time. I want to board through a stupid course designed for fun and not having to worry about oxygen levels on the Mount Everest. But they didn't give a damn. And thus you get this realistic mountain in which a lot of tracks feel the same. You just go down a snowy mountain where everything looks like each other. Like, you got a bunch of white snow, a bunch of trees, and these endless red grind trails which they really went overboard with. And honestly feel like an afterthought you quickly get bored of. And not to mention there are way too many fucking crevices, way too many spots to fall off the tracks. And they tried to combat that by implementing this rewind mode. By pressing this button you rewind to before falling down, and it's even worse than the regular reset in the previous games. Like, you just get set back to a certain spot on the track, but this rewind mode sets you back to where you were, which is about 10 years. So you get passed by pretty much everyone, and it's so fucking punishing. Like, making a mistake is incredibly punishing, as with these select warps your mistake is pretty much instantly gone, and you start in a new spot, which made failing not as annoying in the previous games. And with this rewind, you land so far back to correct your mistake that you basically lost the race already. And combine this with the fact that there are so many cliffs, make it a very not noob friendly game for many different reasons. Then Blur was also not noob friendly, and it makes it quite infuriating to play at times. But then again, I understand with this realism approach, I don't think you can pull off these type of maps without the rewind function, because if you just can press select and reset to a certain spot on the map, it would make falling in cliffs not punishing at all. So I truly do understand it, I just don't like it. And the level design is a problem, but they made a bunch of shit, they added a bunch of shit to complement this realistic level design. They decided to add nutskis, but they decided to add gadgets to make things feel new and fresh, I guess. Which is honestly alright. But flying down the tracks in a wingsuit isn't just like not SSX, but it also made it hella boring. Like, I don't need a wingsuit in my snowboard game. But that's not even the only problem. Like, all the gadgets and the equipment gimmicks, they felt half-baked, man. It feels like the developers thought, like, they're only in the game, like, let's implement these gadgets to make things feel new and fresh. But then again, they're only in the game for a couple of tracks, so why would we bother fleshing them out? I don't care. I would have much rather seen just one or two of these mechanics applied to the entire game and then really refined. That would have made it even better, even though, in all honesty, I wouldn't want anything else than snowboard and skis in this shit. But at least then they had an excuse to implement it. Now it just feels like, why even add it? But the worst part about this gear isn't even the way they work. It's we were living in the time that we're still living in, microtransactions. This was the early days of microtransactions, and they were needed for customizing gear. And I hate it. And the best boards will, at high levels, will cost insane amounts of money. And this is really a problem if you don't play online. In online you could farm money pretty easily and it didn't cost a whole lot. But in 2024, do you still think there's online for this game? I'll let you answer that yourself. And then there's like the fact that on top of these microtransactions, the different suits available, they give different stat boosts. So is there really character customization? Like, yeah, sure, you can buy new shit, buy these microtransactions and with these microtransactions and customize your character. But if the different suits and all, they give different stat boosts, like, you're just gonna all buy the same thing and you're not even really able to look how you want to look, because it goes at the expense of speed and tricks. And like, even if making credits online back then was easy and made everything readily available, shit was unnecessary as hell and just made character customization non-existent pretty much. It completely negated it. And this gear, upgrading this gear, is then obviously used for speed and tricks, like I just said. And that too has a problem, because unlocking better gear, anything after level 1, you spin so damn fast that you can't actually see the tricks. You can't actually appreciate the tricks that you're performing like you could in the original games. They once again tried to make it over the top, but didn't play the actual games and just were like, oh yeah, I've heard my neighbor talk about it, and it's probably like this. Like they tried to make it over the top and then hella overcooked it. And you can try to appreciate it and spin slower and score not as many points, but that would make you unlikely to win, because you won't get enough boost and all that. So what's the point, man? You feel like a Beyblade for no reason, and it sucks. It actually sucks. And on top of that, it wasn't even just the visuals that you couldn't appreciate the tricks, but it also seemed like airtime was your enemy in races. Like almost all the points you made came from keeping a combo active for the whole run, and those were minutes long. And if you fall down or have a repeat trick fail or whatever, it would end it quickly, and thus you be at a massive disadvantage opposed to the against the people who did actually keep this combo alive. That being said, though, I do think the game is enjoyable. Even though they messed up a whole lot, there is something interesting about going down this mountain. I especially like the drone view of going down the mountain and all these crevices and all that, and the game telling you, oh, crevice on the right, oh, all that. Like, it looks hella spectacular, and I think you could give them credit for that. If this wasn't an SSX game, I probably wouldn't have bitched about most of this. But because it feels so different, it kinda... It shouldn't be allowed to have the SSX brand smacked on it. And even though the game is fun for a bit, after a while it feels like you're just going down the same track. And sure, mechanically it does work, your character feels really good to control, and the grinds are satisfying to an extent, but after a couple of hours it feels like you're going down the same track repeatedly, and there's just not a whole lot happening. There aren't crazy shortcuts like you'd see in the previous games, there aren't crazy jumps, there aren't crazy rail grinds. It's just going down a bunch of snow with red rail grinds and a bunch of trees. And I think that makes it very, very bland. Like, there's no characters to care about, no levels to truly care about, nothing memorable. And I think that's super unfortunate. And they knew it wasn't great, because they tried to salvage as much as possible with the later added Tricky DLC. But it was too little and too late. Like, they added Mount Eddie, which was pretty cool and probably the best track in the entire game. But yeah, it didn't save it. And there was no split screen, so you wouldn't even play this with your friends, because, well, you couldn't. It feels like SSX 2012 was very much a victim of its time, where microtransactions and realism were they're still prevalent today. It's been a really long era of, like, we're getting back to like cool shit now, where big studios are actually wanting to make crazy stuff again, but we had a very long period where everything was supposed to be realistic and felt the same, with fucking microtransactions and way too many DLCs, and I think this game is a victim of that. I truly do think it's not a bad game, but it's just a really boring game. And it is in fact a garbage SSX game that should have never had the SSX brand. I honestly would have rather had it die with SSX Blur. And yeah, that's every single SSX game, how I feel about it. It started off very strong, it shot EA Sports big up to the upper echelons of extreme sports games, and then they fucked it. The thing is, I don't even know what I want from this point moving onward. I think the best thing they could do is give us an HD remake of like Tricky, Free, or On Tour, or all three of them. But I don't even know if I want SSX to come back. I truly do feel like a snowboard game is very limited in terms of things where you could innovate. I really think there isn't a whole lot to do to make things feel new and refreshing for very long. I think they did very well with especially like Tricky to Free to On Tour, and even Blur was pretty unique even though it didn't work out. I think that's already more than I could ever be able to think of. But where would you even go from here? How do you keep things interesting and not make it feel like a Call of Duty or a FIFA where every fucking game feels the same? I don't know. But they know more than me. They are much more creative game designers than me. And I just want to say thank you for all these games, even though I bitched about the final two. I still hold this series in very high regard. Even the final two games aren't bad games per se, they just don't work. And I might have been very negative about them in this video, but I don't actually think they're like bad games. I think Blur is like a 6 out of 10 and this is like a 5 out of 10. It's not garbage, it's not the biggest shovelware shit I've ever seen. But yeah, I would love for the series to come back. I don't know how. So maybe it's for the better that it died, and at least left a good legacy to an extent. But yeah, that's all I wanted to say. That's how I feel about SSX, that's how I feel about all the games. It's unfortunate it died, and it might be for the better. But yeah, I do miss SSX. I made it way too long, didn't I?